I don't have any enemies. It's just people get on my nerves. And that's the sort of thing that Marshall meant. Not big enemies who are going to kill you, but people you would like to kill just for a few moments in your life, like those who are closest and dearest to you. And you get into arguments and you hate them for a few minutes, for a few days. And it's interesting to look at what enemy images do to our relationships and do to us. So if anybody would like to come forward with some conflict that you've been in, that you are in regularly, that you can think of somebody who is an enemy image for you from time to time, that would get us off to a really good start.
I've had a couple people in my life that I view as sociopaths. The enemy image is sociopath. And
that sounds good.
And I mean that in a very specific way, not just someone who is like doing stuff I don't like or being hostile, and but people who literally seem to take pleasure out of people's pain. People that like do things that they know you don't like and then laugh at you and that kind of thing, as opposed to someone just being rude or pushy or inconsiderate, but where they say to you, I enjoy seeing you in pain. So sociopath is my biggest enemy image.
I would love you to take a case without naming the person. If you could give actual concrete information about what the person said. Because when I hear you judge them as sociopaths, I'm imagining the pain that you are in, and I can also imagine the pain that they are in. And it would be useful to sort out the different sorts of pain which we're dealing with.
Sure. Well, there's this one person at work who walks up to me and actually literally hit me in the back of my neck. Like, not so much that it would physically hurt me, but because I have not shaved. And then when I turned around, he just was laughing in my face. Ah! And I actually literally put my hands up like this at work, like I was going to hit him. I was one step away from punching him, and he just kept laughing, like, ah! Like, I got you type of thing. And, right, so, and he's had a history of bullying or on a low, and so I was in pain because I wanted respect and social social ease. And
I like that.
he was he has pain around me because if I'm ever not as connected to him as he would think, as he would like me to be, he feels a sense of isolation, like I'm not being a friend when I should be, even if I'm disconnected for reasons that have nothing to do with him. If I'm sick or whatever, I'll walk by, or I used to have a bad leg, and I'd walk by kind of having trouble walking. Like, how come you're not paying attention to me? And I'm going to make you feel pain because I feel rejected. I feel that seems to be his. Plus, he's a cocaine addict, so
that probably doesn't help.
Doesn't help at all, no. But yeah, so it's one I have trouble dealing with. There's been a couple people in my life that are similar to this.
I wonder if you'd be willing to write down the most horrible judgment that you can think of, and that you have as you feel the pain, or at least the surprise, when he hits you in the back of the neck. It would be something that begins with you. No. Okay.
You are a sociopath.
Okay. Just take that.
And drug dealer.
You sociopath drug dealer.
Yes.
Okay. That's good. So I'd like to listen to somebody else before we start processing some of these very useful, harsh judgments. So, yeah, hi, Kola. Salil, can you switch color on? Yay, you're on.
Okay. I have this conflict in my life. There was this man I met. I fell in love, I thought. And there was some kind of a financial crisis in my life. Not that I didn't have the money, I didn't earn enough, so I couldn't swap my apartment. I sold the house, bought an apartment, and I needed his name to be able to have a credit from the bank. He didn't pay anything, I paid everything, but he put his name on the contract. And then he lost his health and his job and his home. And it was like, in Iceland we say there is this elf father. He comes when he has really difficult kids. He might come and swap them, you know. So you might put your kid into bed and it's okay. And when you wake up in the morning and the kid wakes up in the morning, it's like crazy. And it was like that happened. Alfinnur, Álfakongur, came and swapped the guy. So he looks the same, but he doesn't feel the same anymore. And we had really, I have some NVC background, and I really tried everything I was able to solve the situation. It didn't work, and it took half a year or so to get him out of the apartment. And now he wants to get his share. So he's claiming half of my savings, my life savings, just because I don't know what. So we are in this conflict.
That sounds like...
I might have some images of him, yes?
So I would like you to come up with the worst image, the worst word you could find for him. Either at the beginning of the breakdown of the relationship or now, depending which is the worst judgment. And we're going to befriend our judgments, rather than be afraid of them.
Yeah, I know. I'm the one, my favorite one when I'm really in a bad mood, and if I translate it directly into English, it's retard. Retard. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, is it retarded?
Yeah, he's a retard.
Yeah. Okay. Retarded. You would say that if you're angry, thinking that the person's mind has not developed in a normal way, that the person aged 30 is behaving like a 3-year-old or something. Would that be it?
Yeah, something like that. I know his pain, you know. And
yeah. Okay.
It always somehow flares my emotions for him. So, you know.
And I'd like you to notice what you've just said. His behavior flares my emotions. Is that right?
His background, you know, I know his history, and that flares my emotions for him. So I'm not as judgmental as I might be if I didn't know his background. So
there's some understanding in there, is that right? As well as the judging. Okay. Thank you, Kola. There are a couple of people who have raised their hands, and I don't know where they are.
Anisha?
Yeah.
Where is Anisha? Oh, there you are. Got you.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if the enemy image can be something personal to you. So I often have this internal conflict of choosing between multiple options. And my enemy image is my fickleness.
Is my?
Fickleness. Fickleness?
Okay, yes, sure. Your fickleness.
Yeah, fickleness, fickle-mindedness, indecisiveness, yeah.
So when you are in dialogue with yourself, you refer to yourself and say, "You're so fickle," something like that?
Yeah. And maybe
Is
we
that
could
right?
just add, you are so fucking fickle, yeah.
Yeah, you're so fucking fickle. I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So effing fickle. Yeah, that's right. Good. Yes, that helps to have the adverb there to enrich the adjective.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nisha. Is there
Yeah.
still
One more,
somebody?
Attila.
So would you like to tell us, Attila, what your
Oh,
enemy
hi.
image is? It's
Okay.
like hi.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I was still back in Hungary. I'm in London at the moment. And I was walking in the street, and a car was just coming out of an underground car park,
Right.
and like at a very high speed. And it didn't even slow down before entering the main road where I was just walking by, and it almost hit me. And if it hit me at that speed, it just barely missed me. And I became very angry. I was actually scared of for my life, but it showed up as anger because I didn't feel comfortable to become vulnerable. So I just angrily knocked on the side window of the car with one finger and just walked past the car at a fast pace. And I was also dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression and panic attacks, fear of death. So I wasn't even in the, I didn't have the capacity to think it through. But I just knocked on the window and I just walked past, steam coming out of my ears. And I didn't even hear the man jumping out of his car and running up to me from behind. I was just hit on the back of my head. I fell on the concrete. And by the time I woke up, I got up, still feeling dizzy. The man in the car was gone. I didn't even see the man. I didn't remember the type of the car. But I felt really hurt and powerless. And I was feeling a mixture of anger and the fear was gone, just anger and powerlessness. It was really traumatic. And this memory just came up this morning when I was still lying in bed, waking up. And I imagined the situation like being intimate with someone. And it happens quite often to me, at least once a week, that I imagine being close to someone or intimate with someone, and in my imagination they try to attack me physically, and I retaliate extremely brutally. I think from that point I just became very protective about my physical safety. I started taking it very seriously, and if I was threatened, I would always retaliate with extreme force, because I stopped looking at fights as trying to prove our manliness or whatever. Didn't ever provoke any fights, but if anyone was threatening me, I would threaten them with extreme harm
And if we
themselves.
come back,
yeah.
If we come back to the car driver who drove out from under the ground at high speed, couldn't possibly see you, narrowly missed you, how would you judge that person in the heat of the moment? What is he?
I was judging them as, he was driving extremely fast, that the engine was roaring. And
Yeah.
I'm still judging them as careless. Careless.
That's very kind of you to judge them only as
Oh,
careless.
I mean their behavior, and I judge him as a murderous psychopath.
Oh, thanks. That's
Judging
better.
him as the murderous psychopath and his behavior as being careless, which is kind of an objective statement because he wasn't following the rules. Yeah.
We certainly can't deal with the two things at the same time.
Yeah.
If you go around ripping out people's eyeballs, you're going to be in dead trouble because people are going to say, I have a need for protection, and they'll find a place to put you so that they are protected. But I'd like to deal with the murderous psychopath because I think that'll help you a great deal to be able to breathe. Because it sounds that if you retaliate very ferociously, you're not giving yourself a space in which to decide what you're going to do. You do it. And it's as if you are perhaps saying to yourself, this is bigger than me. And I'm not actually making a cool-headed decision about what I do. I'm reacting very violently because I don't breathe. And it'd be interesting to see the next time you want to react violently, if it is true that you have blocked your breathing.
I was not just bullied, I was actually physically attacked and almost killed by a speeding car. And
I can see that.
It's very traumatic, yeah. And I'm not reacting like this in actual situations, but I'm always prepared to stop people from harming me, whatever it takes. Even if it takes taking an eyeball out. If I fall on the concrete and hit my head, I can die on the spot because I cracked my skull. Yeah, and I don't want,
No. But just for the moment, I'd like to pause on the judgment that you had of this person, which I've put down as careless, murderous psychopath.
Yes.
Okay. So I see there is somebody, all the hands seem to have been dealt with. Is that true, Salil? Can you see any hands up?
Yes, I don't see any hands up, so we can.
So we can now go to the process.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like somebody to come forward, either Happy or Kola, Anisha or Attila, and see whose case we deal with in order to see what enemy images look like. So I'm not quite sure what to decide when there are 4 people out of 4 who are interested in going first. So what I'll do is just take you alphabetically, and we'll see where we end up taking it alphabetically. So Anisha has the first choice there. And so if I could see here from you, Anisha, your judgment was so fucking fickle. And the judgment here is about herself. And it's very interesting to have enemy images about oneself, because the process is exactly the same, whether the judgment is about a third party or oneself. So, Anisha, I wonder if you could give us some details of one decision where you have judged yourself to be fickle.
Okay. So the current decision that I'm struggling with. So there are 3 things that are currently fascinating me. One is transaction analysis. I just finished my certification as a transactional analysis psychotherapist. I'm interested in NVC. I just did my IIT at Sri Lanka, and I'm planning to apply for the certification. And I'm interested in my PhD. So I've been confused between these 3, that what do I prioritize? And my PhD, I want to apply for my PhD. And Are
some of these choices mutually exclusive? Are you faced with things that you would like to choose and which are overwhelming because there are too many choices that you would like to implement?
Yeah, I guess so, because I currently see them as mutually exclusive.
Okay. And do you have any idea about prioritizing them so that you can choose them in a row, but you don't have them pressing upon you and saying, I want to do this and I want to do this, and it's at the same time? That obviously won't work. Is that your problem?
Yeah, that is my problem.
So the problem, as I see it, is one of gaining clarity. That you cannot do two of those things at the same time. Is that true?
So yes, it is at one level it's a problem of clarity, and I think it's the other is actually deciding, because when you're deciding, you're making a choice and you're letting go of the other options.
Okay. So is it like the difficulty is getting started on something? Is that deciding, I'm going to do this?
Yeah,
Is
and
that
letting the other two options, putting the other two options on hold and committing to one.
As long as you're putting them on hold and you're not putting them in a bottomless pit, then that's fine. And I think it would be interesting to look at the process of decision making as somebody standing on the bank of a river, a good swimmer, and wants to swim the river to the other side. And the person is on the bank and not plunging into the water. And it would appear that that's the most difficult bit, is to take the plunge. The swimming's no problem. You know how to swim. You know how to swim with words. You know how to swim with reading. You know how to swim with listening. But there is that difficulty of starting. Is that true for you?
Yeah, that is bang on true.
Okay. So then there's a part of you which is saying to you, don't get into that cold water. It's very cold. Stay where you are. Is it something like that?
Yeah, kind of.
And so when you stay where you are, there is comfort in not getting into the cold water. Is there any comfort there? Because I think that if you stay on the bank of the river and you don't dive in, then you do it because it's meeting a need of yours.
Yeah, so intellectually what you're saying does seem to make sense to me, that maybe there is some comfort and therefore I am holding on. But I think what's overarching right now is a sense of pressure to make a choice, and this whole anxiety about having to make a choice.
Okay, so would you be willing to put on a piece of paper columns? You put columns on a piece of paper. Have you got a piece of paper in front of you now?
You'll have to give me a minute, just a minute.
Okay. And maybe everybody else, while she's getting a piece of paper, could do the same thing, because this is going to be very helpful to you too. So if you have a sheet of paper, what I'd like you to do is to draw 4 columns, 4 vertical columns, all the same width. And the 2 columns on the left are for your first choice, okay, your first alternative. The 2 columns on the right are for the second alternative. And if you like, you can call the whole diagram choice.
Okay.
If you now name the columns, the first 2 columns on the left are going to be, first column, needs met, second column, needs not met.
Okay.
And then column 3 and 4 are for the second choice, and you'll call this third column needs met and the fourth column needs unmet. At the bottom of the page that you've got now with your 4 columns, I'd like you to number the columns. The one on the left is number 1. The one on next to it is number 2. The one next to that is 3, and the last one on the right is 4. So what you might like to do now is to make a thick line between the first 2 columns and the second 2 columns to show that you're dealing with different choices. Now, you may have 3 things that you want to do simultaneously. And what I'm suggesting is that we take the things in pairs so that we don't get into too much confusion. So you're making a choice between this course of action and that course of action. And maybe you could name those 2 courses of action. The first 2 columns are going to be what course of action for you?
Okay, so the 2 columns for me, I mean, while there are 4 columns, we are subdividing them into 2 choices.
Yep. So what's your first choice going to be?
PhD.
PhD. So call those first 2 columns your PhD choice. Okay. Now call the next 2 columns, columns 3 and 4. You're going to call them something else. What is your next most important choice?
NVC.
NVC certification?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so NVC certification. And I think I heard you say that you gained the impression that these 2 choices were mutually exclusive. Is that right?
That's right.
Good, okay. So which one would you like to take first? Would you like to take CNVC certification or PhD?
I'm actually okay with both. Okay, since I've written PhD first, I'll go with PhD first.
Okay, let's go with the PhD then. So what I'd like you to do is to imagine that you say yes to the PhD.
Okay.
And as you look at the PhD and you see your work unfolding and you see one of your dreams gradually coming truer and truer, you note down in the first column the needs met by that.
Okay.
So can you think of some?
Yeah.
So let's hear them. And other people can be doing the same thing with their choices.
What comes to my mind is need for excellence.
Yep.
Need for depth.
Yep.
Need for recognition.
Yes. Yep. And is it also a need for achievement, realization? Something you could put one of those down or both of them?
Yeah, need for achievement. Yeah, and I think also this is a need for contribution because my PhD is my original work. It's contributing something that does
my need for contribution. Good, yeah. And I imagine that if you're involved in a PhD, it's also meeting your need for learning.
Yeah.
Okay. Any others that you can think of?
I think it also meets my need for self-esteem. I mean, I'd love to see myself being called Dr. Anisha Pandya.
That's right. So self-esteem to me is something close to a need, but it's more the measurement of how we see our need for self-confidence being met or not being met. And so if it's
self-confidence, yeah.
Okay, well, let's have self-confidence in there. Yes, I see self-esteem a bit like a thermometer. It tells me where I'm at in the satisfaction of my need for self-confidence. Yeah.
Cool.
Good. Okay. So you can also continue at another time filling out that column but I'd like you to turn to the second column of your needs not met by doing a PhD. Have you an idea of how long the PhD is going to take you?
5 years at least.
5 years at least? Okay,
Yeah.
that's it. So when you imagine 5 years of your life now being pretty much filled with PhD research and writing and interviews and all the rest, how do you feel?
So there's a mixture of feelings. One part of me is excited because there's a lot of intellectual stimulation that I presume I will be getting. So I'm excited, and there's also a part of me that is overwhelmed.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm like,
So,
holy crap.
So maybe in this column of needs not met, you could put a need like lightness or balance, or what would you like to put
My need
there?
for lightness will not be met. Also, I'm a mommy. I have a 7-year-old son, and
You must put an advertisement on eBay, and you can rent him out for 5 years and take him back when you finished your PhD.
No, no.
So what is the need there? You have a 7-year-old child, and it's important for you to meet your need for connection. Is it something like that?
My need for connection, my need to nurture, my need to mother.
Yeah, your need, I imagine, for responsibility too.
Yeah, my need for responsibility. And also currently I'm at the peak of my career. I have a practice which is 12 years old. I'm doing well for myself. So all of that will kind of have to come to a standstill.
Okay, so let's have a look. When you say a standstill, I guess a need for movement or a need for evolution, something like that. Sorry?
No, that doesn't resonate to me.
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
It's like, no, it doesn't sound like need for evolution, but I think it's how do I say this? Because to me, I'm also doing corporate workshops. So it's something I've established. So it's letting go of something that you've already established.
That's right. So is it a need for security?
Yeah, I think that's
in the
the
way
word.
people look at you, and now they're saying you're not there anymore, and so that, But let's try security and see if that fits.
Yeah, I think that fits for me. It's the need for security.
Okay, good. Okay. Is there any other need that is not met?
What else? I need for fun.
Need for fun. That's right. Good. Let's have fun in that column. Yeah. So we can come back to these columns later. I'd now like you to turn to your second choice, which is going for the process of CNVC certification. And I'd like you to look either at the needs unmet or the needs met. You can take them in either order, doesn't much matter.
Okay, so I think what's calling is the needs met first.
Good, okay, let's have a look at the needs met by undertaking the process of CNVC certification.
I think what the first need that gets met for me is need for personal growth.
Good, okay, growth, let's have that. Yeah. When you say personal growth, I don't see any other growth that could be termed a need, which is anything else than personal. So the word growth would suffice for me.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, and then what else?
But also, I think it's personal growth. But also is there's this need for connecting to something that's beyond me. This whole NVC community, this whole space has an energy of inspiration.
Inspiration. How about putting down inspiration straight away? Is that okay for you? What else? As you see this community around you and you sense that you're belonging to it more and more?
I think the word is belonging.
Belonging. Hey, let's go for that. Belonging. Good. Yeah.
And I need your help, Godfrey, and I'm not able to kind of word it right. But maybe, this whole desire to be a part of something that's larger than me. This whole intention of service.
Yeah, I love that. It's again like belonging, but maybe there's a more suitable word than belonging.
There is, this whole element of nobility that I see in the NVC space. It's noble for me. It's something that's transpersonal. Yeah, the word is transpersonal.
Transpersonal?
Yeah.
Put that down in brackets because I'm not quite sure that I would consider that to be a need, but we'll look at it.
Maybe the need to reach out. The need to reach out.
Good. Okay. Reach out. Yeah. And I was wondering if there was a need met there, which might be called self-fulfillment.
Yes. That is it. Self-fulfillment.
Good. So if it's important to you when you touch on a need, underline it so that you don't miss it. Is there anything else that's in there? Yeah, I was thinking there may be in you a need for community, which is met by doing the certification process. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. And I think for me, while all of these needs are important, what also comes to me is that why am I choosing to get certified? I could just get some trainings and start, teaching NVC. But for me, it's not as much about, teaching NVC, or not as much about having one more accolade on my CV of myself. But it's really about a discipline. It's about committing to a way of life.
There's a lovely book you might like to have a look at by Jane Nelson, Nelsen. I think her name must be of Scandinavian origin, but I think she's established in the United States. And the book is called Positive Discipline. And I hear you referring to that. You might enjoy her book where it takes the weightiness out of discipline. It's discipline with lightness and service, either to yourself or to others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a need, but also this desire to carry the light of compassion that Marshall introduced through his work. And I know that I have really benefited from that. And to be able to carry that light forward.
So that to me sounds like the need for transmission. Is that right? That you have received this gift and you would like to pass it on.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
So let's give the needs met a rest, and let's now turn to the fourth column and see the needs not met by doing the process of CNVC certification over a number of years.
No, could you please repeat? I didn't get that one.
So I was suggesting that we now look at the needs unmet by opting for the process of CNVC certification.
Okay.
Needs of yours that would not be met because you make that choice. And you might like to look at that.
Not met. Okay, so this sounds very selfish to me, and I'm judging myself for that. I might
Okay.
say it.
All right. So maybe it's your need for contribution that is not being met.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether it's contribution, but I think it's more of need for. I think there's something around pride. Because, yeah, so even if I'm doing NVC, I'm still contributing. But there's this ego part of me, the pride part of me saying, "Hey, this is not your work. Well, this is beautiful work, but this need for originality." Yeah.
That's right. There may be a need there for creativity or innovation or something.
Creativity, innovation, yeah.
Which you would find not being met because you're picking up other people's ideas, using ideas that already exist. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
What other needs might not be met? You might have a look in column 2 and see if some of the needs not met by doing a PhD are also not met by devoting a lot of time and energy to becoming a certified trainer.
No, in fact, I see just the opposite. My need for lightness would, I think my need for lightness would be met.
Okay, so why don't you put lightness now in column 3?
Okay.
And what other ones move from column 2 to other columns?
My need to connect. I think if I learn this and make this a part of who I am, I'd really be able to connect to people at a very different level.
Lovely.
So that would also be met.
And who else would you be connecting with in a better way?
My son, my husband, my clients, my patients.
And who else would you be connecting with in a better way?
Myself.
That's the one I was looking for. Yeah. And what would you understand by connecting in a better way? Where are you focusing your attention?
I think
whether the relationship is with you or with somebody else, you are focusing your attention on what?
I think to me it's both, because and I don't see the two very distinct, because to my mind, only when I have a relationship with myself, I can really connect with others. Only then it's real.
I remember Marshall saying something very interesting in that respect. He said, I have the belief that we are all one. And he then went on to say, you may not have the same belief as me, but you cannot deny that we are all derived from the same energy. And so I see a lot of usefulness in considering me to be part of them and them to be part of me.
Absolutely.
So that's helpful. Now, my question was around what part of your focus will be most alive when you are relating either to yourself or to other people. What will you bring to the forefront of your consciousness as you relate? It seems to me. Yep, go ahead.
So I think it would. I see it as a dance, Godfrey, because for me, when there is connecting with self, there's authenticity, there is deep acceptance of who I am as a person, and creating that same safety for others. So I see it as a mutual dance.
I'd like you to test one notion. You've just said the idea of acceptance, and I would invite you to put that in column 3. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, it sounds okay.
And it seems to me that what helps a great deal in coming to decisions in my life gaining the clarity that I need to be clear about those decisions is needs. So if I'm relating to another person, I will be focusing on my needs and their needs. If I'm focusing my attention on my relationship to myself, I will be aware that there are many, many parts in me, and I will take maybe 2 of those parts, and I will be looking at their needs. And I remember Mickey Kashtan proposing another name for nonviolent communication. She suggested that it might be called needs-based communication.
Okay.
And so that might help you in gaining clarity about decisions that you want to make, because you go inside and you judge the parts of yourself that are not in agreement. And by looking at needs, you come to the possibility of making a decision based on weighted needs. So what needs do I have, and how important is each need to me? It won't really be the number of needs, but the aggregate weight of all of the needs in one column. So any other needs not met by going for the certification process?
Honestly, I don't see any other need not met. I mean, at least I'm not aware of it right now.
So now what I'd like you to do is to enrich the columns mutually. So I'd like you to take column 1 and see if any of the needs that you've put in column 1 can go into column 2, column 3, column 4.
Okay. I think all of the needs in column 1 can actually go in column 3 as well.
Okay, can you put them there physically?
Okay. Okay, I've done it.
Good. So now look at column 2. Where else can you put column 2 needs? Not necessarily in the next column. You might move some of them to column 1, some to column 3, some to column 4, some to both.
Okay, so I'm just seeing one of the needs that I initially thought was unmet in column 2 can actually go in column 1.
Good.
Like it says that the need unmet would be the need for connection with my son. But I'm seeing that as coming more from fear. But if I look at the larger picture and the topic of my thesis, I want to be working on power and intimacy. And I think it's a brilliant topic. And I think it would really help me connect to multiple people. It also helps me in facilitating connection between people.
Lovely.
So that one need would go in column 1, but rest all needs I think can fall in column 3.
You've just said something which I find very touching, and I'd like you to think about it. You didn't just say connection, you said connection with my son. And to me, connection with your son is a strategy, maybe your preferred strategy, for meeting your need for connection.
True.
But to each of our needs, you can attach 1,001 solutions.
Totally.
To each of our needs, we can attach 7.5 billion people. And what happens when you say to somebody close, I need you, darling? What happens?
I think it depends on the context, because sometimes when you say I need you, it creates great interdependency, and it creates bonding, and it gives a sense of feeling wanted in the other person.
Yeah. Okay.
But sometimes, depending on the context, it can be perceived as being clingy, being overly dependent.
And so then that creates pressure on the other person.
That's right. That's right.
So I'd like you to think about that. Whenever you think, connect with my son, connect with my husband, connect with my mother, connect with the neighbor, connect with my boss, whatever it is, to think, this is a strategy that is good for me, at least I think it's good for me. Is it exerting pressure on the other person? Because if it does exert pressure on the other person, instead of being a factor for bonding, for increased interdependency, it will become one of those scary things where the other person will think, oh gosh, I wish I didn't have to do that for Anisha, sorry. I wish I didn't have to do that. So I think it needs to be looked at with great care. And I like the way you divided up the two impacts into lovely, this is great. I like this connection with Anisha. And then the other one, clingy, overbearing, too much, and then it becomes dependency and addiction, things like that. So let's go on with the column swapping. And where would you like to go now? Which column to which column? We looked at column 2 being dispersed over the 4 columns, and you've put a lot of column 2 into column 3, I believe, if not
but I think
all of them.
now when I look at the 4 columns, my third column seems to be having most of my needs met.
Okay. All right. So if you were to imagine yourself making a decision now, do you have enough clarity to say, what I really want to do between PhD and CNVC is the certification? That's what I really want to do at this stage in my life.
Yeah, I think I do have that clarity.
Okay.
And it's just funny, I don't know what transpired in our discussion. So while I'm clear that I want to register for my certification for NVC, but I'm also, there's a tiny mini part in me which is beginning to see that these two are not necessarily exclusive.
Okay, there we are. So if you have that inspiration that they are not mutually exclusive, then marry them. Do both of them at the same time, because they closely relate to each other. And you might wish to slightly adjust the title of your PhD so that it's easier for you to integrate it with the certification process.
Yeah.
But we still haven't talked about a third choice. I think you have 3 things that you want to look at. And I said to you, take them 2 at a time. So the next process would be taking CNVC plus an adapted PhD, and the third choice, which was what? What was the third thing you wanted to do?
Transaction analysis.
Transactional analysis, that's right, good, okay. So you could do that. We won't do that here because it'll take too long, but that's your next step, is to look at transactional analysis as one choice, and then look at CNVC certification and the PhD as the other choice.
Yeah, sure.
So how does that go with you?
Yeah, I think that's kind of making this thing look more practical, not larger than life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's important. You only have one life, and it's a mixture of thinking and doing and loving, and your son is an important part of your life. So you have to take account of all these factors, and I loved seeing connection. as being an unmet need when you said PhD.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean you don't do a PhD. It means that when you make your choice, you look at the unmet needs and you take care of them.
Absolutely.
You look at the unmet needs and you take care of them. Our unmet needs are not enemies. They only become enemies when we don't take care of them.
Yeah.
So by doing a PhD, you know that your need for connection needs special attention.
True.
So you're going to give your need for connection special attention. And that to me is the way forward with choice, is not to get binary about it and say, I have chosen to do a PhD, we chuck the rest out. That doesn't work.
True.
So what we do is...
It's not an either-or process.
That's right. It's not an either-or process. And the kindest thing for ourselves and for the people around us is to take responsibility not only for the needs that are met by our choice, but also for the needs that are not met by our choice.
Sure.
In many cases, when you look at the column of unmet needs, you'll find that in your life, you are giving attention to those needs. But for some of them, you'll have to get creative and say, oh, that need is a poor parent with me. So I'm going to set something in train so that that need will be met. So on the one hand, there'll be my PhD meeting all these needs. And on the other hand, lots of different initiatives on my part to meet the needs not met by the PhD. Then we keep a balance.
Sure.
So having looked at the process, how do you feel now about going forward with your own decisions?
I think I'm just acutely aware of how harsh I was being on myself.
Yeah.
And I'm also feeling there's this, it's a funny image I have in my mind, that I thought of this huge dark circle, and actually it was like one small dot. I'm just, yeah, just feeling at ease. Yeah, I'm really feeling at ease right now.
Yeah, good. Would it be okay for you if I asked a few other people to say what their reaction to the process is that we've just been through? Making friends with ourselves? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, anybody like to take the floor? I see that somebody else has got a hand up, and I think it was Kola. Is that right?
I'm really interested in knowing, not precisely, but if there was not swapping between the columns. We didn't get that. So were many needs added to different columns?
Yeah, that's what happened with Anisha, is that she looked at column 1 and then she put a lot of those needs into column 3. She looked at column 2 and moved those into 3 as well.
So the needs in the columns are quite the same getting, or?
Not really, but they could be. And you could also have needs which are in the met column and the unmet column, which is very important. So we don't lock needs into yes or no. We keep the needs open, and they could be in the 4 columns, 2 columns, 3 columns, or just 1.
And then I would love to add to this confusion just before, or I somehow sensed some kind of confusion about the importance of the needs. For me, it's like flow, Sometimes I'm in maybe a stronger need for something, and then in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or an hour or a week, it might be different. So it's not like concrete something.
Absolutely. That was what I was trying to say to Attila, that it's very interesting for us to keep an open mind about our needs. They are not locked into any particular configuration. They will go up and down depending.
It might even change during a conversation, you know.
Sure, absolutely. From 1 second to the next. Yeah, and that's very important. I just saw Karen's cat go by.
Yes,
Yeah.
please speak. Yeah, please speak.
Hello. No, I had just one question. Hello, everybody. Anyway, Godfrey also. If it's clear when you do the columns that one choice is really fulfills really the most of the needs, the only problem is that the security and the self-confidence is the fear of not having security and the fear of not having self-confidence is so big that a choice is not made what to do then, because it's obvious it's this choice, but if you see on the tablet, no,
yeah,
but
on the
it's
table,
like,
yeah.
And the judgment could be to conclude it's not your way in life to do that. It's something else should be better, like.
I think we can go in ever diminishing circles around a decision without ever reaching the decision. And what I experience as being a great clarifier is to identify needs, savor them, play with them, roll them round in your mouth, roll them round in your head, roll them round in your heart. And this seems to get people to a place where there is not this eternal circle, where you do become willing to commit. And I just say that out of experience. I'm sure that if you want to spend your life going around in ever diminishing circles, you can. And I wouldn't like to prevent anybody from doing that. At the same time, I think that many of us do like to have clarity when there are various decisions to be made, because we like to go somewhere and we can't go in 3 or 4 directions at the same time. And I can see Anisha thinking, well, she can go in at least 2 directions at the same time. She can go for CNVC certification and for her PhD. And if she wants to go for transactional analysis at the same time, she could give it a go, but it might prove to be an overwhelm. Does that answer some of your question? So?
What I understand is that if that happens, you propose to feel the needs that can be fulfilled, to stay with it, and that's it. That's what I hear, to make the strategy to go through it. Is that what you say?
I like the idea of clarity in the service of action. So when a lack of clarity is making me move in circles, and I keep on seeing myself in the same position again, and I'm not moving forward, then I just love the idea of doing this work, of establishing columns of needs met, needs unmet, and making a decision. And the decision is not set in concrete. You can make a mistake. You can do your PhD work for 2 years and then you drop it because it's no longer a high priority with you.
Maybe I was not clear.
Okay.
Your answer, what you give me, is saying that my question was not maybe clear.
Okay.
If you made all the columns,
all right,
choice 1 is the best choice, and you know it is the best choice. My problem, I did it. My problem is I know this choice 1 is the best, and the choice 2 is not. The choice 2 is waiting for something else. But the fear is so big to do this because you never about problem is security, financial security, and self-confidence that say no, wait, go slowly, and so on. What to do then? maybe another exercise, but
what I would suggest you do, if you are very clear about your way forward, is to take it in small chunks, rather than to say, I have at the end of my telescope the view of my PhD diploma. Don't do that. Maybe that gets you straight into overwhelm and fear. If you could say, I'm going to start a PhD, I'm going to do some initial research, and I'm going to look for books, contacts, reports, whatever it is, and I'm going to start. And then I'm going to assess after maybe a month's work and say, do I want to add another month to my commitment? Then if I do 2 months, I might add another 2 months.
okay.
And then I might make it into 4 months next time. So I'm now up to 8 months into the work. And I'm still in a position to be able to change whenever I like.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. So I would like very quickly to go to Kola's one of seeing this person as mentally retarded. Is that right?
Yes.
Because there is a real enemy image, which is clearly an enemy image on the outside.
Yes.
And so if we could take that, and I'd like you to see what happens in your body when you say to yourself, thinking of this person, retarded. What happens in your body?
What happens in my body?
Yeah.
It
When
gets,
you,
it gets
okay.
kind of,
Would you like to do a scan and you start with your head, anything happening in your head, your temples, your ears, your eyes, your jaw, your throat? Could you go down like that?
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Somehow the energy drops into my chest.
Okay, the energy drops into my chest. And then what goes on in your chest?
It's kind of, I get kind of paralyzed.
Okay, you get kind of paralyzed. Has that had an effect on your breathing?
I'm really conscious of breathing into pain like that. So
breathing into pain like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so is the breathing itself somehow constrained or more difficult or less deep?
I'm really conscious of breathing deep.
Breathing deep, deep. Good. Okay. What's happening?
Deep breath.
What's happening to your heart? Do you sense that your heart, as you say, oh, retarded, that your heart changes rate?
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, it happens really fast. So when I'm in this mood of thinking of him as a retard,
Okay.
like in a blink of an eye, it gets like rough first, and then it gets quite smooth because there's kind of a pity for him.
That's right.
And it makes him small.
Yeah, he's so small now. Yeah, that's right. So let's go up into your head again, and you're gonna scream out your word in Icelandic, retard. Visit some of the painful places. And then have a look at what's happening in your body. And then have a look at what is happening in your emotional state. Can you do that? Up to the judgment, down through the body sensations, and into what you're going to tell us is your most dominant emotional state.
There is an anger.
Anger. Good. Okay. So let's go up again into your head with the judgment. scream it into yourself just silently, and then have a look at your body, have a look at the anger, and then you add the words, because I'm feeling angry because my need for something is not being met.
I sense also that I'm kind of overwhelmed.
Okay. All right.
So,
So is that your need for lightness which is not being met?
yes, that too. But mostly, I think it's connection.
Good.
To be heard.
Good. My
And-
need for connection, my need to be heard. Yeah. My need to matter, perhaps. My
Yeah.
need for consideration.
And acceptance.
And acceptance, that's it. Yeah, good.
And consideration, it's a big part, yeah.
And then what may happen as you name the need for consideration is that consideration will transform from a need which can be met in 1,001 different ways to a demand made of one individual. You are going to meet my need for consideration, you bastard, or something like that.
Yeah, but he won't.
No, but it's the energy that's there. The energy may be there saying, I'm not seeing this as a need that can be met in so many different ways. I'm seeing this as something that you must give me. And it becomes very painful, and it adds to the enemy image instead of making the enemy image lighter to bear. So let's have a look now at what you think is going on for the other person.
Okay. Ooh.
So this person got into financial difficulties, I understand?
No.
No, he didn't.
No.
You were alone in the financial difficulties?
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of. And actually, there were no difficulties per se. It was like I just needed someone to secure the bank, kind of. I had the money, but the bank didn't believe me. So
Okay. You didn't leave the money in their bank, so they didn't believe you.
You know, they think, I don't know. I was able to do what they wanted from me, but they didn't believe that. They wanted some more, reassurance.
So what was happening in your former boyfriend's world? What was happening for him?
In that moment?
Yeah. No. What was going on in his life that was impinging on his ability to be close to you?
He wanted to support me, I'm sure.
He wanted to what?
Support.
Uh-huh.
Support. I have this image of him as the great rescuer.
Uh-huh.
So, in a way, my jackals are speaking, keep me small to be, you know, the guy.
Rescuable.
Yeah, who's rescuing me. And somehow in my sense, he's really longing for kind of acceptance from the outer world, from his friends and community.
Right.
So he was investing in his hand.
In investing in relationships.
No, he was investing in the apartment, even if he didn't say anything. So, and he talked about it, so it's not like a ghost in my head or an imagination. He talked about that. So, yeah.
When you see your unmet need for consideration, what happens to your anger? I think the anger was caused by this unmet need. And once you identify the unmet need, then what happens to the anger? Does anything happen to the anger? Is the anger still full-blown, or has the anger transformed into something more akin to helplessness or sadness?
Yes. Helplessness may be most.
If we move away from the anger to a more manageable feeling like helplessness, that can sometimes help to attenuate the enemy image. And instead of seeing him as the evil person incapable of consideration, you see him as someone in distress.
Yes, I do it all the time.
You do it all the time. Good for you. Salil, we must have got to the end of the time, which
Yes, we
ran
have.
away.
Yes. In fact,
So,
every time we have it for 1 hour. This time we experimented with 1.5 hours, and that too was short.
next time, 8 hours.
Yeah, I wish we could take all the questions.
Yeah.
So let's check with Kola, if Kola is okay with giving it a small break now, and then.
I'm okay. I've been working on it, a lot. It's good to have different perspective. Yeah, I have lots of support, and I'm working on my situation. Let's say.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kola.
I'm fulfilling my needs in different ways. So.
That's the important thing, to know that for each of our needs, we have 1,001 different strategies.
And I'm really working on that. So.
Good.
And thank you. If there are any questions, the last minute comments or questions, quick one-liners, please go ahead.
Godfrey, it's
hello.
Convention. I love you.
Thank you. And I would like to thank NVC Connect for having invited me. And there are always the same misgivings when you end a program like this and so much has not been said, but I'm confident that what has been exchanged will be helpful to people's reflection about how close we are to each other, all human beings, and how much we have in common.
It was very valuable, Godfrey. I love the process, the 4-column process.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.